Alright, we're going to review 11.7 and 11.8. To start, we'll review 11.7, which is about cones. We're going to review the formulas for volume. If you remember volume, a cone looks like a pyramid, so it's going to be 1/3. It's the same formula, so 1/3 times the area of the base times the height of the whole object. So we could do that first. So in this first question, 1/3 times the area of the base times the height of the whole object. So the base is a circle, so we're going to find the area of the base. The area of a circle is pi r squared. So the radius is 6. So square that, multiply by pi. I'm going to round to the nearest hundredth. So we'll get 1/3. When you multiply, 6 squared is 36 times pi is 113. So it says 0.97. If we were rounding to the hundredth, the 7 makes the 9 round up to a 10 like that. So 113.1. And then it's times the height of the whole object. So a lot of students would try to use this piece, but this is called the slant height. It is not the height of the object. The height of the object is from the very bottom to the very top of the object. So this would be our literal height. So we will need to find it. So if you notice, this makes a right triangle. It is a right cone. So in a right triangle, if you're missing a side, you can use the Pythagorean theorem. So I'm going to use a squared plus b squared equals c squared. We are missing a leg. The hypotenuse is 14. So I'm going to say h squared plus 6 squared will equal 14 squared. H squared plus 36 equals 196. Subtract 36 on both sides. H squared equals 160. We will go ahead and take the square root. Sorry if you hear my baby in the background. Or my daughter in the background. So that means the height is 12.6. Do not yell at mommy, honey. So now we're going to multiply. Again, it doesn't matter what order you multiply in. I think this is the easiest way if you don't have a scientific calculator. I'm going to multiply 113.1 times 12.6. You get a very large number, 1425.06. To multiply by 1/3, you can also, same thing, divide by 3. So the volume is 475.02, and then it would be inches cubed. Because this is volume, it is 3-dimensional, hence the 3. Now we'll do the surface area. Surface area will equal pi r squared, this accounts for the circular bottom, plus pi times r times L. And remember that L stands for the slant height. Slant height. So I'm going to draw down here. Surface area equals pi times the radius squared plus pi times the radius times the slant height. So the radius is still 6. Radius is still 6. The slant height will be different than the actual height of the object. So you want to look for the slant height. Slant height is 14. So if you have a regular calculator, you're going to have to do this separately. So 6 squared is 36. Pi times 36 is still 113.1. That's the first part. We're going to add it to the second. So we're going to do pi times 6 times 14, which is 263.89. And then I'm going to add that to 113.1. So the surface area is 376.99. This is surface area, so it's going to be inches squared because area is two-dimensional. For the second question, we're going to do the same thing. We'll start with volume equals 1/3 times the area of the base times the height of the whole object. So your base is still a circle. Use a different color. It's still a circle, so we're going to do pi times the radius squared. This will give us the area. They did not give us the radius. They gave us the diameter. The radius is going to be half of the diameter, so the radius is going to be 6. So again, pi times 6 squared is the same as before. So drop down my 1/3. And then the area of this is still 113.1. And then times the height of the whole object. So let's see if they gave us that. That is the height of the whole object. It's 18. So I'm going to multiply these two first. So we'll do 113.1 times 18. And then divide that by 3. That's how you take 1/3 of something. So the volume is 678.6, and then it would be inches cubed. For surface area, again, pi r squared plus pi rl. So we said the radius was 6, so plug that in. And then remember that L stands for the slant height. So the issue is, this is the slant height and we don't know it. If we were to detach this, just to make it a little bit easier to see, this is 6 because it's the radius, right? This is 18 because they point to it. So we don't know this is the slant height. But we can find it using the Pythagorean theorem once again. So a squared plus b squared equals c squared. C squared is always across from the right angle. My son's getting restless, so I'm going to do this a little speed up. Square them and add them together, you get 378. Take the square root of that, and you get 19.44. So the slant height is 19.44. We know this is still 113.1. I'm going to pause so you don't have to hear him. So you get 366.44. We are going to add them together. And you get 479.54. Inches squared. Again, it is surface area. Area is two-dimensional, so it is squared. Cones A and B are similar. Find the volume of cone B. So I had a lot of kids ask me questions on this, but if you don't use the formula, you're not going to get it correct. So side 1 over side 2 cubed equals the volume from the first over the volume from the second. So the side from the first, they gave us the height of the object. So the height of the first is 6. Then the height of the second is 14. The volume from the first, again, I am going to leave this with pi. I'm not going to multiply it. What is 24? Yeah. Because I want it as exact as possible, it actually makes my life a little bit easier to wait to multiply times pi. Because the answer your volume will also be in terms of pi. So, again, if one of them is in terms of pi, the second one will also be in terms of pi. I like to reduce before I cube, so 6 over 14, they're both divisible by 2. Reduces to 3/7. It just makes it easier to cube. Remember, when you're cubing, you're multiplying a fraction times itself 3 times. So 3 times 3 times 3 is 27. 7 times 7 times 7, I think is 343. Hold on. Is 343. So we squared it already. This is me squaring it, or cubing it, sorry, 3 times. You are going to cross multiply. So 27x will equal. So when you do 343 times 24 pi, you can multiply the two numbers together and keep pi, just drop pi down. So 343 times 24. Last step would be to divide by 27. So again, if you're not using a scientific calculator, that is fine. You're going to actually divide these two together and again drop down the pi. So divide by 27. So you are going to get a decimal. It is, I'll move this over. Again, we divided these two numbers, 8,232 divided by 27. You get 304 point, we'll say 89, and then pi. This is the last of 11.7. We're going to find the volume. So this is a composite solid because there's more than one solid in this picture. So we're going to break it down. We'll start with the top. And this is a cone. It falls under the category of a pyramid. So it's 1/3 times the area of the base times the height of the whole object. So the area of the base we'll find first. The base is a circle. So we'll need to find the area of this circle. So using pi r squared. So pi times 8 squared. 8 squared is 64. So pi times 64 is 201.06. 201.06. And then the height of the cone itself will be from the very bottom of the cone to the very top, which is 6. So drop down the 1/3. I'm going to go ahead and multiply 201.06 times 6. And I get 1206.37. Divide by 3. Or multiply times 1/3. It's literally the same thing. Just depends on what calculator you have. You get 402.12. This is not the whole answer. This is how much fits in this top portion. So we will move on and figure out what fits. And actually, if you notice, the bottom cone is identical. It's just flipped upside down. It still has a radius of 8, right? A radius of 8. So the area of the base is the same, right? And then the height is the same because it's pointing at, from the very top to the very bottom is this. So actually, we already know the bottom is also 402.12. Okay, so I'm going to keep that in mind. I don't know how to signify that for you without blocking. All we have left is the cylinder in the middle. It is a leaning cylinder. Looks like the Leaning Tower of Pisa, if you will. So I'm highlighting these so we can find them later to add all of them together. We're going to find the volume of a prism. A prism falls under the category, or freeze. Find the volume of a cylinder. A cylinder falls under the category of a prism. So we're going to find the area of the base and multiply it times the height of the prism only. So the area of the base is a circle. We would do pi r squared, but the radius is still 8. We've already done this before, so we already know the area of the base is 201.06. And then you want to multiply by the height of the cylinder only, which would be this 10. This is actually easy. It'll just move the decimal over. So that's the volume of the inside. We're going to add the 3 things that are highlighted. This represents the top cone, the bottom cone, and then the cylinder. So we're going to add 402.12, 402.12, and then 2010.6, which would be 2,814.84. And then, of course, this is volume, so inches cubed, because it is three-dimensional. In 11.8, we went over spheres. We're going to find the volume and the surface area. These two, the formulas have one thing in common. The volume is 4/3 pi r cubed, and surface area is 4 pi r squared. So there's one thing you plug in to each of them, and it is the radius. In a problem like this, where it gave you the circumference, you will need to find the radius in order to find the volume and surface area. 1 second. So we learned in 11.1 how to find the radius given the circumference. We'll use the circumference formula that has the radius in it. If the circumference we know is 8 pi, so we'll plug in 8 pi because that is the circumference. It equals 2 times pi times the radius. So 2 pi is multiplying times r. So the opposite of multiplying by r is dividing. So we're going to divide 2 pi on both sides. The pi's will cancel out. 8 divided by 2 is 4. So because we know this, we can find the volume. Volume equals 4/3 pi r cubed. So you'll need to cube first. I don't quite remember how I told you to handle this with a for function in the video, but this is one way. 4/3 is equivalent to 1.3333333, repeating whatever. So what you could do is 1.33. I wouldn't round it though. I would use as many threes as I could fill the screen, and then times pi, and then times 64. That's what I'm going to do. But again, I wouldn't round this. As many threes I could fill the screen I would use, because that would be closest to the value of 4/3. So for volume, I got 268.08. Again, this is volume, so feet cubed. Surface area is a little simpler. It's just 4 times pi times the radius squared. So you'll do 4 times pi times 16. So surface area is 201.06 inches, or is it feet? It's feet. Feet squared, because again it is area. The last question I'll use is review. We're going to find the volume of a composite solid. So again, this is broken up into multiple shapes. We actually have what you would call a hemisphere, which is, half a sphere. So we're going to find the volume of a sphere and then cut it in half. So the volume of a sphere is still 4/3 pi r cubed. So we need to know the radius, and it is 9. So I'm going to cube that. 9 times 9 times 9 is, which is 729. Again, I don't have a scientific calculator with me at the moment, so I'm just going to use 0.133333, as many as I can fit on my screen, times pi times 729. So if you multiply all of this, you get 3,053.63. Okay, so that is the volume of the top, and actually it's not. That's the volume of the whole circle, or the whole sphere. We actually need to cut this in half. So either multiply times a half or divide it by 2. We're going to get 1526.81. So I'm going to highlight this. That is the volume of the top of the volume of the bottom. We'll do 1/3 times the area of the base times the height of the whole object. So the area of the base is a circle. I'll erase it so you can see. So we're going to need to use area equals pi r squared. So the radius is 9, so pi times 9 squared. So pi times 81. I'm sorry if you can hear my children. I'm almost done. Whoop. This is the area of the base, 254.47, and then times the height of the whole object, which would be 18. Again, it doesn't matter what order you multiply in. I'm going to do these two numbers first, which is 4580.44 divided by 3. Alright, add the volume. Adding them together, 1526.81 plus 1526.81 is, wow. Would you look at that? Centimeters cubed, because it is volume.